everybody. I am Kristy Woodson Harvey, and I am so excited to be hosting the one and only Mary Kay Andrews on today's episode of Blank to Beautiful, where we interview artists, designers, authors, and creatives about how they undergo the transformation from blank to beautiful, just like it sounds like. So today we have with us Mary Kay Andrews, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her. I could talk about her all day, but she is the New York Times bestselling author of 24 novels, including The Weekenders, Beach Town, Ladies' Night, Summer Rental, and her brand new Hello Summer, which debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. Her first novel, Every Crooked Nanny, was published in 1992 by HarperCollins. She went on to write 10 critically acclaimed mysteries under her real name. In 2002, she assumed the pen name Mary Kay Andrews with the publication of Savannah Blues, and in 2006, Hissy Fit became her first New York Times bestseller. She is married to Tom Trocheck, her high school sweetheart. They have 2 grown children, 2 adorable grandchildren, and countless memorable kitchen experiences. She and her family divide their time between Atlanta and Tybee Island, where they cook up new recipes in 2 restored beach homes, the Breeze Inn and Ebb Tide, which if you are a devoted Mary Kay fan, you will recognize those names because they are both fictional places in her novels. So in between cooking and plotting her next novel, Mary Kay is an intrepid treasure hunter whose favorite pastime is junking and fixing up old houses, which makes her the perfect guest for today because not only is she an author, but she also loves design. So thank you, Mary Kay. And
great to be here, Kristy.
I just wanted, of course, to congratulate you on your latest New York Times bestseller. So exciting. And I wanted to see if you could start out by telling us just a little bit about Hello Summer.
Well, Hello Summer is really a Valentine to my days as a newspaper reporter and a tribute to print journalists everywhere. And it's about a big city journalist who's been working. Her name is Conley Hawkins. She's been working at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as an investigative reporter. Things happen. She ends up going home very reluctantly to her hometown to work for her family's very struggling weekly paper in the fictional town of Silver Bay, Florida, on the Panhandle. As soon as she's home, she gets guilt-tripped into working for the family paper by her grandmother, and within days gets enmeshed in a mystery and a political scandal. Oh, and a romance.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Well, that is awesome. And so I know, obviously have a background as a reporter, as you said. My first really exciting journalistic story was about a giant squash that looked like Elvis. So, small town newspapers really do have something special. Can you tell us a little bit about your time as a journalist and how you made that transition from journalism into fiction?
Yeah, I started my professional journalism career right out of college. I went to work as a reporter, general assignment news reporter for the Savannah Morning News. And I think that's where I fell in love with Savannah. Grew up in St. Pete, Florida, and but the St. Pete Times at the time was really a very big deal, crusading paper, and there was no way I'd get a job there right out of college. Went from Savannah to Atlanta. My husband was going back to school to go to Georgia Tech, so I got a job at a crappy weekly, really crappy suburban weekly. And eventually, thank God, after 20 months, ended up at the Journal-Constitution. So I was a reporter for about 14 years. And then, newspapers changed. Yeah. Especially with the advent of USA Today, stories were getting shorter and dumber. And at the same time, I wanted to do more. I had 2 young kids at home, so I thought if I could write fiction, I could be home when my kids got home from school and still, make a living. So I started writing in secret. The last 2 years I was at the Constitution, and we had a little writers group going in the features department. I was a features writer by then. But, I covered all kinds of stories when I was a reporter. And I covered the beauty queen stories, and I covered the cow milking contest at the county fair. I covered some breaking news stories, murder investigations. I covered Hurricane Hugo when it slammed into Charleston.
Wow.
So I covered all kinds of stories, and that kind of fueled, for the first few years, especially, some of my plots when I started writing fiction. So I was writing in secret. I thought, well, I'll write mysteries because I'd always been a mystery reader.
Yeah.
And I understood mysteries are a great way to start if you're writing fiction because there is an architecture, there's a blueprint with a mystery. And genre fiction, I always tell people, as people I think want to turn up their noses at popular fiction, commercial fiction. The great thing about it, especially starting out, is there are tropes.
Yeah.
There are conventions. There are things you can do that help make it work to learn your craft. And so that's what I did. I wrote a mystery that didn't sell. I wrote it in secret. I would go back to the paper on Wednesday nights. I didn't have a computer at home. And after a year, I finished a book and I submitted it. It didn't sell, but I got good rejection letters. And I had written 5 chapters of what became my first published novel, Every Crooked Nanny. And I was mentored by an amazing, amazing woman, longtime columnist at the Constitution, Celestine Sibley. She took my manuscript to her longtime editor at HarperCollins, who was a legend at the time, Larry Ashmead.
Mm-hmm.
He bought my first novel. And so I've been doing this ever since.
That's amazing. I love that. And we did talk a little bit about, your design style, and you write a lot about your junking and you're redoing your houses. And can you describe your design style for us a little bit?
I don't know if I have a style. I think it's just old.
Well, that's a style.
Clutter. I remember in the 80s reading a lot of design magazines and loving The Prince of Chintz, Mario Boada.
Yes.
And, I love design. I buy my idea of candy. I like candy, but I also like design books.
Yeah.
So like India Hicks, Islands book. And, so I've always had an interest in that, a love of it. I have absolutely no skills, but I know what I like, and I know what I like to surround myself with. I like things that have a story, that have a past, even if and half the time I make up the stories.
I love that. Well, so do you think that there's some similarities between what you do in writing and what you do when you're, say, redoing a house?
Yeah, probably. I think, the first thing you have to think about when you strip a house down to redo it is looking at the structure and the bones and making sure, that you have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Roof. So that the roof doesn't leak after you've already refinished the floors.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think probably there are some similarities. Yeah.
Well, I know in some of your earlier work, you really did kind of combine those two loves. I mean, you definitely have some stories where, you talk about, you have characters that have design related careers, or just in case people want to go back and check those out, can you tell us a little bit about some times where you wrote about something that design lovers might enjoy?
Yeah, Savannah Blues, for instance, the protagonist, Wheezy Foley, is an antique picker.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and she's redone an old townhouse in Savannah, and her husband leaves her for another woman, and so the only thing she gets in the divorce is the carriage house behind the big house. And so she fills it up with the treasures that she's collected as a picker. And she's an estate sale person, and as am I. And in that book, she goes to an estate sale at an old plantation outside of Savannah and lets herself in the night before the estate sale, and opens a closet door, and out falls the body of her husband's mistress. And then in Hissy Fit, the protagonist is an interior designer. And she gets hired, and she's in Madison, Georgia, which is a beautiful place full of antebellum homes. She gets hired to redo an antebellum home for the mysterious owner of the place. And so she goes on a buying trip, and the buying trip she went on the buying trip for the house to all the places I like to go.
Which is great. That always works really well.
There are beach houses in so many of the books. There's a beach house, an old beach house in Hello Summer that it's called the Dunes, and it belongs to Connie's grandmother. And that kind of is it looks a lot like our big old beach house on Tybee Island. It's got a cast iron sink in the kitchen and wooden floors and old furniture and those great beach house smells.
I love that. So you and I have been doing a project together on Wednesday nights called Friends in Fiction, which has been great. So if there's anybody that is not following us, head over to Facebook and check out Friends in Fiction because we've had the best time. And I think for me, one of the most interesting parts of doing Friends in Fiction, with other authors is talking about, creative process and what that looks like. And I know a lot of Design Chic, readers and now listeners are really interested in that creative process. So can you tell us a little bit about, how you get started when you're working on a new project?
Yeah, it usually starts with a collaboration between my editor and my agent and I.
Mm-hmm.
We go to a long, boozy lunch and we talk about ideas. I may have been bouncing ideas off of them, so we have some stuff to brainstorm. With Hello Summer, this was what my editor said. I want you to write a book about a small town paper, a big city journalist who goes to work at a small town paper. Yeah. And I've been asking. I wanted to do that for a long time, and for years she'd said no. So I start with that. I like to start with a title, so I know the feeling of the book. And so she right off the bat wanted to call it Hello Summer, a title I hated. But she won, and now I'm glad she did. I think about the characters, the protagonist. I write what's called women's fiction, so my protagonist is almost always a woman. Who is she? What does she want? Why can't she get it? The setting of the book is incredibly important for my kind of books I write. I think about where I want the story to go. I may not know the end exactly, but I know where I want it to be. So I have a rough roadmap. And then I start off writing in a real linear fashion.
That's wonderful. Well, you're so accomplished. I mean, how many New York Times bestsellers do you have? 20?
No. I've written 27 novels, and this was my 13th in a row. So 13, lucky 13.
That's amazing. I mean, especially, I think people, don't understand the work that goes into that. That is truly an incredible accomplishment, and especially 13 in a row. I mean, so does it get old, or is it just so exciting every time?
No, I think the stakes get higher.
Yeah.
Because you have expectations, you have goals for yourself, and you set the bar higher. And I wish I could say it gets easier, but it never gets old. Holding your book in your hands for the first time, that never gets old. When people say, "Oh, I know you're tired of hearing I love your book," I'm like, no, please.
Yeah. We'll never be tired of hearing that. That's great. Well, you have so many incredible accomplishments, both personally and professionally. What are you most proud of? Or is there something that kind of stands out to you?
Well, my first bestseller happened hissy fit. I got the news. We were living in Raleigh at the time. My editor called and told me. And I'd gotten so close before, but this time, and that was always my goal, to be a New York Times bestseller. I never knew I was a goal-oriented person for a long time. It turns out I am. And I called my husband, of course. I was so excited. And then I called my parents, and my dad, who was Irish, answered the phone and burst into tears. And then my mother got on the phone, and you'd have to know my mother. She was quite a character. She said, "Well, I knew it. I knew this would be the book that would do it. I knew it." And so if you can make your dad cry for happy, and your mom, go around for weeks telling everybody she meets, strangers. My daughter's a New York Times bestseller. What's your kid done? But my mom dropped out of a heart attack 6 weeks later.
Oh my gosh. But
no, it happened while she was still alive, and she got to bask in the glow of that. They were both so proud. So I think if you can, whatever, and they were proud of me for other reasons.
Sure.
Not being sent to prison would be one reason.
Right. I mean, that's always something that you're proud of with your children.
Yeah. But that first time, and that it happened while my parents could still enjoy it. And
that's wonderful.
And they were so much a part of it. So
yeah. So is there anything, kind of on your bucket list as an author that you think, or not even as an author, just in general, like something like, I really want to do this, or this is something I really want to accomplish, or
I want to be a #1 New York Times bestseller.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Okay.
Professionally, that's what I want. And, that sounds crazy. And there were so many years, I would never have dared to say that. I never would have dared to say, someday I want to be a New York Times bestseller. But I think you have to own your dreams.
I totally agree. Well, and you told me this the first time that we met was at a book festival in Decatur, Georgia, and I'm so excited to meet you. And we were chatting, and you told me that there's always a next thing. Like when you get to the place where you want to be, which I mean is human nature, but as a writer, as an author, there's always somewhere else that you want to go, whether it's being top 10 on New York Times and then hitting number 3 and then hitting number 1 or whatever it is, or getting better or writing a new genre or any of those things. So I thought that was really great advice and something good to know. And I think it makes what we do exciting.
Yeah, I think your reach should always exceed your grasp. I guess if I made number 1, then I'd be thinking, well, next time I want to be crowned the queen. I don't know.
Right. I mean, we've got to have goals, right?
and the older I get, the more I understand how important goals are.
That's awesome. Is there a book that you think every person should read?
Well, a book, every person, I think if you're a writer, maybe To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay.
And everybody, I think, because it combines humor and compassion and beautifully drawn characters. There's a mystery, and the voice in it is so singular and at the time so original. That's one of the books that strikes me as a book that everybody should get a chance to read.
I love that. Well, you are incredibly busy, so I'm so grateful that you took the time to do this. And before we go, can you tell everyone where they can follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram as Mary Kay Andrews, Mary Kay Andrews. Facebook, I'm MK Andrews on Twitter. I'm everywhere. You can't get away from me. And you can find us Wednesday nights, Friends in Fiction.
Friends in Fiction. And your website's marykayandrews.com, right?
Yeah.
And I'll drop all those links below so that people can find you and buy links for new Hello Summer. I'm going to show it one more time. It's such a wonderful beachy summer cover. I absolutely love it. And it is my June book club pick. So if you're reading along with my book club this year, which I know a lot of you have been, and I'm so appreciative, and we've had so much fun, to make sure that you listen to this and that you pick up Hello Summer if you haven't. So thanks again, Mary Kay, for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Kristy, thanks for having me.